As a former 911 dispatcher, I had heard all sorts of strange calls, but this one stuck with me. I remember taking a call from a woman who was hysterical, ranting about a black man walking down the street. According to her, he was doing nothing wrong, except for the fact that he was black and walking. At first, I didn't know what to do. This was clearly not an emergency, but our policy dictated that we had to dispatch an officer to speak with her. I sighed, knowing that this was going to be a difficult call. I scanned the list of officers on duty and saw that the only black officer available was outside his jurisdiction. But I had no choice. I sent a computer message to the officer and the supervisor, explaining the situation. When he arrived, the woman went absolutely nuts. She screamed into the phone that there was a black man knocking on her door and that she was scared. I calmly explained that this was the officer she requested, but she was inconsolable. I had to think on my feet. I knew I couldn't send another officer, but I couldn't leave the situation as it was. So I dispatched the supervisor to handle the situation. When he arrived, the woman refused to open the door and was still screaming on the phone. The supervisor tried to reason with her, but she wasn't having it. As I listened to the call, I couldn't help but feel disgusted. It was clear that the woman had called simply because the man was black. It was a blatant act of racism, and it made my blood boil. But I couldn't say anything. I had to remain calm and professional. Eventually, the woman hung up and the call was over, but it left me with a bitter taste in my mouth. It was a reminder that racism still exists, even in the most unexpected places, and it was a call that I would never forget.
I used to work at a gas station in a town that was divided between the suburban area and the rural area. It was a pretty culturally diverse place, but there was a stark difference in the atmosphere between the two parts of town. The suburban area had a lot of different businesses and was more culturally diverse. The rural area, on the other hand, was what you would call redneck country. Anyone who lived there would tell you the same. I'm Filipina, and I have some pretty distinct features that tend to show. I have high cheekbones, dark hair, dark eyes, and somewhat tanned skin. I'm more light-skinned because my mom is white, so it throws some people off. But I'm almost never identified as Filipina because I speak Spanish. We had a lot of Spanish customers in that particular area, so some would overhear me speaking to them in Spanish and either look surprised that I knew how to speak it, or, more commonly, mistake me for being Hispanic. One early morning, a Hispanic regular came into the gas station and got his usual coffee, water bottle, and a pastry. We usually talked while he made his coffee because we just opened up and it was dead around that time. He was on his way out to head to work when another customer swung open the door with a very annoyed expression. I was caught off guard not only because he swung open the door aggressively, but because there was no other car in the parking lot or at any pumps, so I had no idea where he came from. My regular told me adios, so I naturally responded with, "Pase un buen día." I think my mistake was that I looked at my new customer before I was done speaking to the previous one, and this made him very angry. He started yelling at me, saying I was being racist, and that I was racially profiling him. I was confused because I didn't know what he was talking about. I tried to explain that I was talking to the other man walking out of the door, but he cut me off and told me to speak to him in his native white language, putting a heavy emphasis on white when he said it. I was taken aback by his request. I had no idea what he meant by a white language, but I decided to try to be accommodating. I then began to say random phrases I could remember in various languages like French, German, Italian, and even threw a little Polish in there. But he went off on me, telling me to stop and calling me a fucking border rat bitch. Honestly, that was a new one for me, but I stopped as requested. I looked at him with the biggest smile on my face and told him, "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know which white language you wanted me to use, so I was trying all of them to see which one it was." He started calling me racist again, claiming he was going to call corporate on me for racially discriminating against him and not giving him service. I told him that I didn't know what he wanted me to do for him yet, because he was too busy racially profiling me and spitting racial slurs at me for me to ask him. He smiled smugly and said nobody was going to believe my illegal ass, that he said any of that anyway. I politely pointed to the cameras around the store and told him that I had 8 different angles of him saying all of it to me. His smile vanished. He told me to fuck off and go to hell and stormed out. Honestly, to this day, I have no idea where he came from or what he needed from the store, but that experience hasn't and probably won't ever leave me.
As a college student, I spent my summers working as part of the golf maintenance crew at a high-end golf course. It was the same job I held during my high school years, so I knew the ins and outs of the course like the back of my hand. One particular day, I was assigned to work on the driving range. My duties involved getting everything ready and setting up the carts for the golfers. As I was busy with my work, I noticed a woman hitting golf balls a few yards away from me. I didn't pay her much attention, but she seemed to have noticed me. After a few minutes, she walked up to me, her face red with anger. "Excuse me, young man, you're not allowed to use that cart," she said in a condescending tone. I was taken aback by her words. I knew I was allowed to use the cart since I was an employee of the golf course. "Ma'am, I work here. I'm most definitely allowed to use the cart," I replied, trying to remain polite. The woman didn't believe me, and her tone turned even more hostile. "Don't lie to me. I know you stole a cart from one of those damn Mexicans who actually work here trying to be cute." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only was she being racist towards my coworkers and friends, but she was also being condescending towards me. I was at a loss for words. "All right, ma'am, I need to get back to work," I finally managed to say. But the woman wasn't done yet. She grabbed my arm and said, "No, you're coming with me. I know the general manager, and he will throw you out personally." I knew there was no reasoning with her, so I decided to play along. "All right, fine. I'll come with you." Together, we rode back to the clubhouse in her cart. We made our way to the general manager's office, and the woman launched into a tirade about how I had stolen a cart and was pretending to be an employee. When she finished, she turned to me and said, "What do you have to say for yourself?" I turned to the general manager and said, "Well, Dad, you see, the thing is..." The woman interrupted me. "Wait, this is your son? You let your son go and steal carts from the help?" My father just said, "Ma'am, he works here. There is no problem." The woman was embarrassed and quickly left the room. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of her face turning red with embarrassment. I was glad that my dad was the general manager and could set the record straight.
Please like and subscribe for more videos like this one. Thank you.